Let's move on now to the Kansas City Chiefs free agency review. But before we do that, this is the last series when it comes to the free agency portion of the 2023 offseason before we pivot to start previewing 2023 season, division winners, game previews and predictions coming each week. So if you want to see more Chiefs predictions, Chiefs content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell to get notified when new Chiefs videos get released. And Ryan, let's get into it here.
Let's do it.
The Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl victory, another Super Bowl appearance. It's kind of hard to imagine how this team could keep getting better and better, and yet they end up making it all the way to at least the semifinals or not the championship games every single year. And when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, Andy Reid as your head coach, it's kind of hard to mess it up. But in general, though, they did lose a couple of key players such as OBJ, Andrew Wiley as well. But I think that they did replace some great pieces, replace them with some great pieces as well. And so, and I thought that they did a good draft as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's go ahead and just get into their roster because I think that'll help break things down a little bit. So starting off at the top with this wide receiver room, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore are the starters. Then you have second-round pick Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, and then a few other guys who in cast, right? A lot of guys that probably won't make the roster, but it's interesting. They let Juju Smith-Schuster walk in free agency. They did replace him with Rashee Rice. Kadarius Toney, they expect, I think, to have a big role in 2023. However, he's been pretty injury-prone throughout his entire career in the NFL. I know he's only 2 or 3 years. I think he's 3 years into his career. But yeah, so I think a pretty solid wide receiver group. Patrick Mahomes will definitely elevate the abilities of this group, right? Like if you give this to Mac Jones, this would not be enough. But Patrick Mahomes will make these guys a lot better. To me, where this offense gets really interesting, I think you look at this offensive line. They let Orlando Brown Jr. walk. They let Andrew Wiley walk. And then they replace him with Donovan Smith, who I think is close to 35. And then Jawaan Taylor, who they paid a good bit of money, but there are some questions in his run blocking ability, and he's a pretty good pass blocker.
Yeah.
Right. He's not, I wouldn't say elite, but still a pretty good pass blocker. And one of the things with offensive lines that I want to highlight, a lot of it is chemistry and knowing your assignment and the man around you's assignment. So, like if somebody runs a stunt, which guy you're taking. Right. And so I think they might have some hiccups early on as this offensive line gets some reps together.
Yeah, it could be something similar to what we saw with the Bengals offensive line last year in those first couple of games, just getting used to one another. I will say when it comes to the tackle position, the only one that I think has a for sure starting spot is going to be Jawaan Taylor, whether it be left or right tackle. But when you look at Donovan Smith, Wanya Morris, who they drafted in the 3rd round, super athletic guy out of Oklahoma. Yeah. And then also Lucas Niang as well. I think all those guys could be the other starting tackle. Wanya Morris is definitely a project, but you go look at his freak athletic ability. That could be a guy that we're talking about in a couple of years as like what is steal in the draft. And so, once again, it's like we're trying to nitpick little things here when it comes to the Chiefs. But now it's gotten to a point, though, it's like if you're not betting on them to win the Super Bowl, it's just tough just because they've proven everyone time and time again. Just because this offense, you're right. MVS, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore individually aren't that scary. But then when you put Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback, Andy Reid calling the plays, it seems like anything's possible. And we haven't even talked about Travis Kelce as well.
Exactly. I will say Travis Kelce is 33 now.
I get that. With tight ends,
he hasn't shown any signs of slowing.
Well, and that's what with tight ends, and he hasn't had too many major injuries, knock on wood, obviously. And with his role and how he plays,
he'll be 34 in October.
Okay, so he still has a couple more years left in him. He's definitely slowing down a little bit. That's not like no one's denying that. So, but they utilize him so well, and I think he's able to kind of avoid the major hits. You don't really see him get hit hard too often.
Yeah.
Well, it's also he's a big guy, so he's the one doing the hitting. So
Yeah.
When it comes to the running back room, getting Isaiah Pacheco and then also Jerick McKinnon back as well. I'm pretty sure that he re-signed. He re-signed this past year. They don't need CEH anymore. Because those two guys alone, I think, are going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
I like their running back room. Let's move on to their defense because I think this is going to be a really interesting topic to kind of watch this year. So George Karlaftis was their first round pick last year, and then they signed Charles Omenihu from San Francisco to replace Frank Clark and
Carlos Dunlap.
Yes, thank you. And then they also went out and drafted Felix Anudike-Uzomah in the first round again. He's a little bit more of like an outside linebacker type edge rusher. So that's going to be interesting to see. But they definitely, I think, replaced those two edge rushers that they lost with people who could replace that production, right? So I think that's going to be interesting. Chris Jones, as always, is going to be solid. And then
you can make an argument he's the only reason why the defense was serviceable last year was because he brought so much attention. And then because of that, it gave immense opportunity to everybody else. And the thing that really sticks out to me is I like those draft picks. I like getting Felix in the first round. I mean, they could have gone so many different ways, but I think Felix fits their system, their 4-3 defense well. Same with Kendrick Coburn as well. But look at how young this defense is. Chris Jones, 16. Derek Nadi. Okay. And I'm not sure how old Charles Omenihu is. I know he signed unrestricted from San Francisco, so I'm going to assume he was probably drafted. And sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, but
18, 19, I think.
18, 19. He's that old. He's like over 200 years old. That's a dumb joke.
Okay.
But there's a lot of youth. Thank you. I appreciate it. There's a lot of youth on this team, and they already won a Super Bowl, so there's a lot of now veteran experience, and they're just going to keep getting better and better. So that's what is impressive to me, which then at the same time also makes me annoyed because now this means the Super Bowl winning team is now only going to be getting better and better.
Yeah. But then that's only the offensive or the defensive front. I think you look at these linebackers, Willie Gay, and Nick Bolton was one of the best linebackers in the league last year.
I was the entire first strings outside of like a couple of the really good guys on the defensive front. They're really young everywhere else. Justin Reed is I believe a little bit older also, but that's still
but I still think he's 27 or 28. Like he's not. But then the secondary, they were playing 6 guys in the secondary that were rookies last season in the playoffs. And so just to have that experience going into your second year, I think is huge. And this defense, I think, should be a lot better because they were a little hit or miss last year. And I think they should be a lot more consistent this year.
And then you combine that then with the excellent, at minimum, just game management from both Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like it's hard. Yeah. I feel like you can't come like there was the Tom Brady Bill Belichick debate of like which one was like who was the reason why the other was great. I think both are great, but at the time it was tough. Even now it's like both guys are extremely successful no matter where they're at. So like talk about the overall greatness of the Chiefs. It's like I feel like you just have to kind of say them at once. Like not saying that one is making the other great or vice versa, but it's just the combination of the two makes them what's above great, excellent. Like if they're both great, then they
platinum,
make them
platinum,
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that makes sense. Leave a comment if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing to disparage between either one of the two, but they're both so great and understand each other and so similar. It's like it's just two of the same person. They're just one's a coach, one's the quarterback with their overall level of greatness. It is quite fascinating to watch. I don't even know if that makes sense. Or not, but it makes sense.
It makes sense. But let's get into what a successful season would look like for the Chiefs, and I feel like this is going to be a pretty easy segment.
Super Bowl,
they need to be. They want to repeat. This AFC has been looks extremely competitive, so that's going to be really tough to do. But if anybody can do it, it's the Chiefs, right? Like we thought that they were probably going to maybe tick back a few notches last season, and they won a Super Bowl. So,
well, and so this is where one thing I would see if we want to put outside of the obvious, Eric Bieniemy is not the offensive coordinator anymore.
yeah.
And so we just talked about that. Well, we'll get to see how much influence he really had on that Chiefs offense, because I think that's be one thing of a measure is if they don't lose their offensive threat, if they kind of turn into a little bit of what the Bills offense turned into the second half of the year, where they didn't really seem as lethal, didn't seem as effective. If they can kind of maintain that momentum, and by all accounts, it primarily was Andy Reid calling the plays. Nothing against Eric Bieniemy, not saying he's not going to do well in Washington. But so I don't feel like they will lose any regression. But if they can kind of maintain that status quo of just having an amazing offense without any regression just because some coordinators have left. And then also, too, then if they can stay healthy. But I feel like you can't really control that.
Yeah, exactly. So, all in all, I think if the Chiefs, I mean, their AFC Championship game, Super Bowl, anything less is kind of a failed season for them. So, it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Tracy Take. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. And leave a comment down below on what your favorite off-season addition was for the Kansas City Chiefs. Was it a free agent signing, a draftee? Let us know down below. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.